think I made it. Hey, Laura, are you there?
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. How are you? How's everybody?
I'm doing well. I wish we could hear others
Yes.
talk. I want to sort of try it out. I don't know if you played with this and see if we could have someone just say hi.
Well, we got a hi in the chat, so that's
Oh, hi,
good.
Francis. Yeah, it was hard leaving the other session, the dance party one.
Yeah,
Um, I was like, the time was coming up for this one, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to go. But
I was still like pumped, with all that music and
I never had a better experience like going through my emails in my life, I think. And I'm like, why don't I play this type of music more? Perfect. So maybe do you want to give maybe just another minute or two and then we could start this conversation? Sadly not with music. Yeah, the DJs have been great.
yeah, that sounds good. It looks like Rosalinda is in the panel, so not sure if do we start or
Oh,
oh,
that's a good question. I pressed the plus sign,
okay.
but I don't know what I just did. Did I break something? Okay. I guess we could get started. Yeah, I don't know what that
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Let's go ahead and get started.
okay. So basic introductions. I guess Laura, do you want to go first? Maybe just say who you are. I know you've had experience already, giving talks before, but also, who you are, your background, and then sort of why you decided to do this talk, and I'll do the same.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hi everyone. I'm actually very excited to be in part of this conference. I've enjoyed so many of the talks that I've seen. I've enjoyed every talk that I've seen. I haven't been able to plug in as much, unfortunately, um, but yeah, happy to be here with you all. Happy Friday. And so my name is Laura. I work at DoorDash. I'm a senior software engineer. I work in the logistics organization at DoorDash. My team primarily focuses on the Dasher experience, and so a lot of the features, initiatives that I work on are in trying to get Dashers to their destination, whether they're picking up something at a merchant or they're dropping off something at a customer, making sure that they have all of the tools needed to make that a successful drop off, navigate it to the right place, and overall a good experience in our platform, so that they can move on and maximize the earnings that they make. So that's a little bit of work in terms of like a little bit of me. Like personally, I'm originally from Uruguay, from Uruguay. I have been in this country for a while, though. I actually came to study here. I came to get my bachelor's degree here in Chicago, And but I've actually like really lived in a bunch of different places. I lived also in LA. I lived in Seattle. I currently live in Mountain View here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So moved around a lot for work and for studying. um, so yeah, that's a little bit about myself. And then I guess like the reason why I really wanted to be here and to speak at this conference. I've actually been to many conferences. I've spoken in a few of them, and I feel like the representation of Latinx folks across the board is so low, and it is low. I know that there's a lot of us out there, and I know that there's a lot of folks that want to get into tech and might be intimidated and might think that they're not sure if they can make it or not. And so I I really want to engage with the community to just get my voice out there and hopefully have folks engaged and know that yes, they can get into tech. They can come and speak at these events, and hopefully pave the way for more speakers, because I think it's by us being here and by these events, we encourage a lot of people that might have otherwise not been able to, or not thought that they couldn't make it. And so I'm here to really encourage everybody as much as I can. And yeah, I think that's a little bit about myself.
That's very cool. Before I give my intro, I'm just curious, when you made that decision to go from Paraguay to Chicago, did you know anyone that have done that? Because in my head, I mean, Uruguay, sorry.
Yes.
Uruguay, I can't picture, I've never been. I want to go one day, but I can't imagine that transition was very easy. And how did you even decide on Chicago out of everything? Did you know someone that's done that before?
That's right. That's a good question. Yeah. So I'm from Uruguay.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
no worries. But I actually did not know anybody in Chicago itself. I did know a couple of folks that had gone to the Illinois Institute of Technology, which is the university that I attended there in Chicago. And so that's one of the reasons why I applied there. But I applied to a bunch of other places as well. And when decision come time came, I just I think what really like pushed me to go to Chicago and to go to to IIT, to the Illinois Institute of Technology, is mostly because I did know two people that had like a good experience. That was like really like the only two people that I knew that had actually really gone to university in the United States. And then I actually wanted to be in a big city, because I was a little bit worried about like potentially coming into a smaller place, where I might not have a lot of community, or it might actually be harder for me to adapt. I think just wanted to go there to a place that is very multicultural and very diverse. And so that I think those were top of mind, the things that I was thinking about.
Yeah. No, that's I admire that because so a little bit about me. My name's Abraham Gomez. I could actually say my name in Spanish because I feel everyone here could probably pronounce it. It's Abraham, which I never. Only my parents call me that. Like no one else calls me that. So, but I admire when people sort of do what you did, like go to another country, just decide to move and study there. My scenario was not like that at all. My parents were in LA. I was born here. I still live in LA. I went to school in LA. I've always been in Los Angeles. But for me, I'm a customer engineer at Google. I'm not as consumer facing as Laura, but I'm a little bit more focused on selling Google Cloud to customers. Right, DoorDash is actually one of our customers, and maybe later in the talk we'll talk about that sort of relationship that a customer engineer has with a customer. And I guess for me, I've benefited so much from the Techqueria group already, just from pinging people individually or people just offering to help, right, to answer sort of my silly questions, that I just felt compelled that, okay, now is a good time for me to sort of give back. Even if at the bare minimum is just to help someone, feel that, hey, maybe, Abe's not doing a good job here, I should be a speaker next time. Like, I think just engaging more people and getting more people comfortable to speak in these conferences is my end goal. And I do want to state, like, everyone that's on this session, I appreciate you guys jumping on, and just know that this is pretty much to benefit you. So please ask any questions, right? We'll also ask questions directly to all of you, but it is to benefit you at the end of the day. So if you want to clarify anything, or if you want to add your story to, please, don't hesitate to ask. So I think with that, we could sort of mention like why or what even our topic is. Laura, do you sort of want to give it a first glance, and I could sort of fill in the gaps?
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. So I guess, like, like, just to kick us off, like this, when I was thinking about like this talk, and when we were like brainstorming, I think one of our like top of mind topics is like, how can we bring our experiences, our backgrounds, into like everything that we do, both like professionally, as well as personally. I think there are a lot of like, everybody has like a story to tell, in terms of like something that they maybe helped out during their childhood, or something that they did that, really like resonates, especially with with our community, with the Latinx community. I think for me, just sort of like talking a little bit more about that transition, going from Uruguay to Chicago, and like a difference in cultures, a difference in language. I think for me, it's been all about like sort of like I've been translating between English and Spanish like basically my entire life. And back home, I did also some, I did like I was an English teacher for some of for some students that were coming into to school. And so um, when I moved to Chicago, I found myself like doing a lot of that, a lot of like trying to translate, not just between languages, but between cultures, and between different parties. And so like, um how can we all like bring that like experience, making this translation um into things like the workplace. And so like, I think, where I'm coming here too is like a lot of the times when we're when at least when I'm in the workplace, like it's I end up having to translate a lot of the things that happen in the business with the communities that we serve. And so having that being able to like translate what, in my case, like what dashers want to do, what their problems are, and into something that can help them out, something that can solve their problems. It's basically that has like actually come like full circle for me.
Yeah, and I think this translation, maybe some of us did this from just the way we were being brought up. Like for myself, right? My parents were from Mexico, and then they came here, but they were only maybe here 3 years, and then they had me, right? So as I grew up, I would have to translate sort of little nuances between the world that I lived in right here in Los Angeles versus the life that my parents had back in Mexico. And I maybe you were put in positions growing up where like when we spoke to Valeria, right, she was saying that her sister had to translate for her mom not just the language from Spanish to English, but also the context of talking to on behalf of her sister's teacher, right? So she had like her teacher there, she had her sister, and then she had her mom, right, trying to sort of just translate not just directly English to
Hmm.
Spanish, but really what the impact of that conversation was happening. I'm pretty sure everyone here has like a story where you were put to do something, maybe because of your family, or the way you were brought up, where you were having to translate not just the content, not just strictly, like a Google Translate English to Spanish, but the content, right? Like the value of what was even being said and the context behind it. And I know for myself, like, sharing another example, but for my life was being brought up when my dad, he was a locksmith, right? He was a locksmith in Mexico, so he decided to do that here as well. And I remember he was deciding on a name for his company, for his little shop. It was in Downey. I don't know if anyone knows where Downey is, but it was right next to the oldest McDonald's in the United States. We were in the same like little shopping area. And he wanted a name that would get people just interested, but he was thinking only Spanish words or Spanish names. And I was like, well, I don't think everyone here speaks Spanish, right? You have to think something that's in English. And I remember we looked at the yellow book or the white pages. I forgot what they were called back then, but we noticed that they're in alphabetical order. So then we decided, well, why can't you just call it A1, like the letter A and the number 1, and
Yeah.
it would put you on top. So he just called it A1 Locksmith. I know, not very creative, but it was sort of that thing of translating. Like, my dad wanted to get as many eyes as possible to his locksmith shop, but also you can't. I forgot what he wanted to call it, but it was in Spanish, and I think it would have put him like at the bottom of the list. So just little things like that. I'm really curious if anyone wants to share a story. I don't know if we could have you speak, but I think there's a lot of humorous little things that we've done growing up where you're sort of put in weird positions. Like, I know some people had to do or help their parents do their taxes, which I think is very funny. I know when I was 14, I was helping my dad to do his taxes for his locksmith shop. Like, that was just something I did. I don't know, Laura, if you want to share if there's anyone in the group here that also wants to add one.
Yeah, I think it looks like Francis also has a story to share.
I don't know. Francis, is there a way for us to add you here? Because I think it would be fun too. I don't see any. Oh, okay. Oh,
nice.
Hello.
Hey, I shared your story. I hope that was okay.
My story?
Yeah, about how I think your sister was translating on behalf of your teacher, yourself, and then your mom, and just sort of communicating between all that. We were trying to get someone else to also. Oh, okay, you did it.
Hang on, I can't hear you. You can't hear us? Okay. Yeah, I believe so. There's like the moderation panel, and as soon as you hover over their face, there's like the plus button in green, and that's how you can bring them up stage.
Got it. Let me see. I think someone also added a chat. Oh no.
Perfect. To your point, though, growing up Latinx, you're definitely bilingual and more than we realize, not just in Spanish and English, but just translating across. So I love that aspect of the conversation we're having.
No audio issues. Okay, no worries, Francis. Once you figure it out, you could always jump back on.
Anybody else in the audience want to share anything?
Here we go. Second time's the charm.
All right.
I had to switch my headphones. Okay, so I guess did I miss anybody sharing their story? I don't want to step in and.
It's all you.
Oh, okay. No, when I was growing up, my mom was a teacher, so she in the school the population was predominantly Latino, but nobody in the office spoke Spanish. I think that changed, years after we all graduated, but she would be called into the office all the time and have to talk about, if there was late payments or if there was something the mom or dad didn't understand about why their child was in trouble. So she used to say that she was like a translator, a counselor, financial advisor, and all of that because, she didn't want the child to have to do it. So she would jump in and do it for them.
financial, all of that, she sort of became because of that sort of having to be put in a position, right, where there was no one else that could translate.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you mentioned your mom, it reminded me of my mom as well. And she didn't know English at the time, and she was sort of volunteering in a nursing home, I think. And she was translating for someone. She was a Spanish speaker, and the doctor's like, only spoke English. She's like, "Can you help translate?" My mom didn't really know English that well. So the lady was saying that she, her stomach hurts, and I'm sorry, I had to say a couple bad words, or not bad words, but she's like, I have chorro, I'm having really bad poop and all that. And my mom didn't know how to translate that, so she was just saying like mucho poo, mucho poo. And I thought that was so like cute because now she speaks probably better English than I do now. But it's so valuable just being able to be in the like that soft skill, right? Of because my mom had to act it out. She didn't have the words, but acting it out was good enough for the doctor to know, like, oh, okay, we know what medication we need. And I think that's the, sort of the biggest lesson is that this soft skill, maybe you didn't get opportunities when you were younger to do it, through your culture. I feel a lot of us did, or the way we were brought up. But I think it's something very valuable to take advantage of now and build on top of it if you sort of already got a head start through sort of the examples that were shared, or some that like for you, Francis, like your mom being exposed to doing something way out of the call of her duty, right, just sort of sets her up for more opportunities than not.
Yeah, she actually started thinking about, maybe once she retired, that she could go into translating, like go work in the courtroom and be a translator or an interpreter, because that's such a big skill. And it's something that we've had conversations about, because I'm not bilingual. I don't speak Spanish. I can understand it and be in a room and listen, but I can't speak it. And I would always ask her, I'm like, why didn't you guys speak Spanish to us when we were growing up? Because none of me or my brothers, we were not fluent. And both of them are very active in the community. Like my mom is a teacher. My dad worked for housing. So he was in community centers all the time. And my mom said, honestly, because we didn't think it was a benefit at the time, back then, they thought that by us speaking Spanish, it wasn't really like, not that it wasn't necessary, but it could maybe be a strike against us. And she already felt that we had enough strikes as it is, especially me being, born, a girl and being, Latino, and already having 2 strikes against me. I think she honestly, truly thought that speaking Spanish could be a setback.
That's so tough. It's like she meant the best, right? She had your future in mind, but
she regrets it now, because she sees that being bilingual would have been a big advantage. And I've had many instances when I've worked in an office where they'll say, "Oh, but Francis, you could speak to this, right?" Because, and me and my friend, a friend and I, we both, Puerto Rican, not speaking Spanish. We would look at each other like, we don't speak Spanish. So,
yeah,
so it's always been kind of one of those things to try to navigate. And one of the reasons I actually came to this session was because the whole using your Latinx lens as a superpower is because sometimes we don't think of it as such. We're always told that it's a hindrance, it's a setback, because we're always the onlys.
Yeah.
And I've had so many instances of being the only in a room, and you almost want to. College was the first time I experienced it, where it was literally the only like Puerto Rican or Latino in my classes.
Yeah.
And they look at you like you're an alien or a science experiment. It's like, ooh, you're new, and sometimes being other or being perceived as other can be a burden. So I'm really interested to hear both of your perspective as to how you kind of like, I've done it in my own way, but I'm always curious to hear how other people have, instead of seeing it as a setback or a hindrance, embracing it and using it to push yourself forward.
Yeah. And the way I see it is, it's this muscle that you've used, right? Maybe it wasn't translating literally English to Spanish and Spanish to English, but it was at some capacity, you were explaining the world that you saw compared to the world that maybe your parents saw, right? The differences between American culture and Latinx or Puerto Rican culture in your case, right? That there was differences. And I think that's the muscle we want people to consider leveraging a little bit more and working on in their careers. I think Laura has a really good example of how that has impacted her career. Um, and I could talk about mine, but that's sort of what we're thinking, is that you don't just have to translate English to Spanish, because some of us simply just don't have that capability, but you don't need it, right? It's more translating from X to Y and being able to identify, oh, there's a disconnect between these two things. Maybe I could be that person to sort of clear up the mess. And from my experience, I think it's really valuable in the tech world and just in careers, because there's a lot of benefit on both sides if someone just clears up the mess. And for me, I never really thought that was useful to anyone, because I was like, I'm just a middle person, right? I'm not really having an impact. But in my short career, I found that's where I have the most impact now. And that's where people at least keep telling me, like, stay there. Like, you're doing good. Just keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm like, okay, I'll listen to these smarter people than me.
Yeah, so for me, I think just basically reflecting on my career and uh, both where I'm at and goals and where I want to be. I think like what really has like stood out for me is I'm a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for a while now, and I feel like a lot of the times when I thought about software engineering in the past, and when I was in school and when I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm going to be given a lot of tasks to code, and I can code this, and I can code this feature, and I can ship this code, and then that's what an engineer does. But just thinking more about like what is the distinction between someone that's starting out versus someone that's senior or staff or someone that wants to advance their career. I think a lot of it is in just sort of like being able to look up and look at what the needs of your users are and what the needs of your business are. And so it's like it is that translation layer of like and it's not English to Spanish, but it's like your users are not going to be the same people that write your code, and so because of that, you need to have that muscle of like being in touch with the folks that are going to be using your app or your website or your service. You need to really understand them well, and so I think for me, it's all about like getting on calls with dashers to try and understand like what their problems are, and a lot of the times dashers, much like many users, like they don't necessarily know how to communicate the problems the best, because it's just, as a user, you only have like this one perspective of like, my app crashes, or like this button doesn't work for me. But it's in being able to understand like why things why that perception is wrong, or why that flow is not the right flow. Like what is it that they need? What is it that like is going to improve their experience? And so I do spend like quite an amount of time like actually getting on calls with dashers and trying to understand that, so that they can then after that I can like turn around and like be able to prioritize like the list of asks and features that we work on. Like so sort of like try to like aim at like building that product muscle, which I'm an engineer, I'm not a product manager, but like even engineers will actually need to have that like ability to translate and have that intuition to say like, this is the right feature to work on and this is not the right feature to work on. Like just being able to like have that vision and strategy based on just that user empathy and that understanding your users is something that I think is a very, very powerful like superpower that you can unlock. And it is, again, like all related to this translation that we talk about.
Yeah, because for me, I always wanted to be an engineer or a developer. I studied electrical engineering, then I sort of wanted to transition to software. Then I got involved in this little thing called cloud, and then that's how I ended up being, joining Google Cloud as a customer engineer. And I've always itched for being an engineer. I know my title says it, but I'm really not. I honestly feel all I do is talk to two different people, maybe three different stakeholders, and try to figure out how to move forward. Like one thing I always do, a little thing called cloud, um, is sometimes a customer has a problem, and now I have to talk to the Android team, right? But they could be like across the world, right? And then maybe I have to talk to the Google Ads team as well, and I have to understand at a very quick pace what's important to them, but then also how to like I vouch for my customer. And at least for one, the role as a customer engineer, that's sort of one of the most important elements, is being able to just be really good at communicating, sort of bridging the gap. And I sort of doubled down on being a bridge. I sort of, like I said before, I thought it wasn't a skill set or something of worthy. Like it just didn't seem like it was that useful. But being a bridge where people could walk on is really, I think, really helpful, right? And I see it in my job like every day. That's all I'm pretty much doing. I don't code as much as I would like to, but I am sort of brokering these conversations. It's all in English too, right? Sometimes it's been in Spanish, but it's still something you could continually do and leverage, because I think we were all put in those positions at some point growing up. Hey, Anthony.
It kind of feels like I just jumped up on stage at a concert and y'all aren't kicking me off. So thank you. Going off of Abram, your bridge anecdote there. This question sort of comes from a personal point of self-reflection, but also an ongoing conversation I have with a couple of folks who identify as like specifically a friend of mine who identifies as Latina. And it's coming from sort of like the opposite side of the spectrum, right? Like I grew up in a predominantly white household. I wasn't able to identify and learn about and embrace my Latinidad until I was older, and I was able to seek it out, as opposed to growing up in a predominantly, Latino household and then trying to find ways to assimilate. Like my experience is inverted in that sense. And so from your perspective, as you're talking about quickly identifying how to be the bridge in your role, which I think a lot of us inherently have to learn. How do you, if you have any experience with sort of like my perspective of the issue, like how do you set boundaries around like your appropriate identification with your Latinidad? So like not to turn it into like a trope, right? Or using it to like gain favor, like, oh, like I'm Puerto Rican too. See my flag hanging behind me, right? Like I'm so Latino. Like what's that blend, or how, at what point does it not come across as authentic, and recognizing that in others, but not trying to use it to necessarily like, not trying to exploit like La Cultura or anything? Weird
That's
question.
that's a good question. I guess the way I see it, right, is I don't know what, I guess the skill, I guess we're talking about, the superpower is being overly empathetic, right? And I don't think that, being overly empathetic, like in your side, right, is now you have empathy to going back to sort of understanding what it means to be Latinx, right, for you. Whereas others sort of grew up with that, and they're like, okay, how do I integrate Latinx to sort of the world and sort of the workplace environment, because the culture is very different from the way I was brought up, right? I know a lot of us, and I heard other sessions, said that they were the first person in their family to even be in a corporate job, right? And I think it's more of realizing this little, I keep saying muscle because that's the best way I could, because it's something we have to work on, this thing of being empathetic and being able to, realize, hey, there's something here. These two people are trying to get to the same, point A, but the way they're talking, it just sort of doesn't seem like there's a strong communication. Something's wrong, right? So I spoke to a friend of mine. He's not Latinx, about sort of what I was planning on talking about, and he came from a different perspective. He was an engineer that just wanted to optimize every call he was on. So his perspective was, he would jump on a call and he's like, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Can I do anything to sort of, compress this conversation. He's an engineer, right? Of course, he's going to use the word compress. But I think, there's different ways you could come at it. Either it's I want to make things more efficient. I want to sort of be a bridge and sort of just make sure that every stakeholder sort of gets heard, and right, there's empathy around because it's not just, I feel this is something that a lot of people sort of assume, or at least I had the assumption, only product managers really have to do that because they're sort of known, being in between many stakeholders. But the realization I'm making is I think anyone, right, would really benefit from just being attunedly like empathetic to all the stakeholders. So, to your question, I don't think if you're doing this, right, it's not so much like, oh, he's leveraging his Latinx card, right? I think it's just you're trying to solve something and you're trying to bring value to the table. And the way you're doing that is by leveraging sort of a skill set that you're nourishing in your community that maybe you were brought up or not, but you're trying to like bridge the gap between cultures. But now you're trying to bridge the gap between, it could be business and tech, or tech and product, or tech and marketing.
Yeah, actually, when you said like the Latinx card, right? Like I'm white, black, and Puerto Rican, so like the concept of the black card is very well known, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't think about having the other card and then just
Well, you're making sense of a lot of different cards, right? Like for me, it's one-sided, right? Like the way, because I was born here, right? I didn't have a life before in another country. I was born here, so for me, it's a little, there's less dimensions. But for yours, right, you're trying to understand, like, the same sort of thing you're doing.
This card versus that card versus not let people know that I have cards, right?
Yeah, and it's I think it's just at the end of the day, it's just taking advantage that you've been thinking of this, and it's just something that you have to do, and leveraging it in the workplace. Yeah. I'm gonna shut up for a bit because I also want to hear what Laura has to say about that, because I know.
Yeah, well, I was gonna just stage dive off the stage to make sure that it's not about me; it's about you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Oh, he left. Let's see. So thanks everyone for chatting. I think it's really fun being able to hear everyone's sort of different perspectives and the things that are top of mind.
Yeah, I think so. I think the purpose of this, it's sort of like a charla, right? So like if anybody wants to come on stage and share their perspective, their anecdotes, feel free to request. I think you can ask to share video, and then we can bring you on stage. But it's happy to like keep this conversation dynamic and yeah.
Plus sign. Uh-oh. Oh, it worked. Hey, Amy.
Awesome. Yeah. So +1 on showing your humanity via your heritage. So I wanted to ask a question. Do you code switch? And if so, how do you deal? And especially within a professional setting, I think that this is something that some people have been telling me, is exhausting, but I'm so used to it because of my heritage. I cannot even help it. It's compulsory. So, and does that ever in some way feel beneficial to you? To be able to have that skill as well, since you've been talking a lot about how these things can be your superpower, if you will, despite being viewed as otherwise.
What do you mean by code switch? Do you have an example in mind?
Okay, so for example, I in my relaxed state have this accent. This is me, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm at work talking about, I don't know, how we're going to secure a certain asset, I might turn on this voice, which is a little bit more authoritative and perhaps it sounds a bit more, do you know what I'm saying? Like the newscaster voice.
Okay, yeah.
That also like people can relate to and don't feel alienated by.
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
I love asking the spicy questions.
This one's spicy. Yeah. Laura, do you want to go for? I feel I have to think about this because I feel like
Yeah.
because I don't know about all of you, but I feel my personalities change if I'm speaking English versus Spanish, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel I'm a different
Yes.
person. Like, and even my wife is super funny in Spanish, and in English she is as well, but like everyone knows she's funny in Spanish, but in English only I know she's funny. um so I don't know if it's bad to context switch, because at one point you're just trying to communicate better, right? And there's those TED Talks we all watch of, if you want to present better, you don't turn your back, right? You use different tone, you do
Yeah.
all these things.
Okay.
But if you generally feel at one point you're not being yourself, then that's I think when it becomes an issue. It doesn't seem, Amy, that you feel that you're not being your authentic self, right? It's just you have an audience, and the audience is always going to change. I have around
Right.
I don't know 30 different customers. I do not speak to them at the same way, right? Some joke around with me, they're fun. Others, I feel I have to say sir and madam all the time, right? So I think it really has to be on your audience. And I just hope that at one point you don't feel that you can't be yourself, right? I think that's when you may want to just sort of observe why it feels like you're not being authentic. But I think this is more like good for a therapist than myself. I'm not credited to answer this.
I guess okay, let's give a more concrete example also, like another one, if you don't mind. So I'm from Miami, and we say a lot of dale, there's a bit of sound to the way that you speak about everything. And that's even at work. And I find that for folks on the West Coast, this is alien. So, I guess I just wanted to hear about people's experiences with that, and if that's a big deal. But if it's not, hey, cool. That was reassuring, despite you not being a therapist.
I mean, it's I guess, so I feel I would like that, but I guess I'm coming from a different perspective, where I like when I hear people speak differently than myself. I've always enjoyed that, right? But I'm sort of biased because I like when I sometimes meet someone that can't speak English that well, even if it's not in Spanish. It's because I find it, the way they articulate, or the way you could sort of pull information out, it's fun, right? Because I've had customers that were from Russia, and they didn't really speak well English, but it was fun for me, and that's sort of a nature of my job. You just have to communicate no matter what. But I feel I'm too biased in this for this question. I'd love to hear, maybe it's just me, but I've always liked hearing sayings in Spanish that my parents would say, or that other people, and then I would translate them to English because they would just make me laugh, right? They're just so funny, and I just find language in general quite humorous. So that's my honest thought on it. I like it, and I think it just adds more to the table. I think it's just funny.
I think for me, I think it's all about a balance for me. I think we all have our professional persona and then our personal persona, and so it's I don't always speak in the same way. I don't always talk to in the same way. I think we always do that, and even within professional, right, personas, okay, if I'm giving a presentation, I have to do this, right? If I'm talking to my manager, I have to do this other thing, or if I'm talking to a colleague, maybe it's a little bit different. But I think for me, it has been important to at least balance out, bringing enough of myself to work. I think I feel I hear a lot of conversations of oh, bring your best self to work, and I don't think I can go 100%. It's on that. It's not. I don't think it's realistic to just bring all of me to work, because it's just it's not sustainable. But I think for me, it's a bit of a balance, right? I think if I can get maybe 80% or like, I don't know what the percentage is, but like a percentage where like I'm like comfortable that I'm still me, and you know, this is who I am, and these are my views, and like how I feel. But at the same time, just sort of like having that layer of like professionalism, or like code switching, or whatever you want to call it. I think that that is where I can like kind of like strike that balance. And then like when I'm home, or when I'm talking to friends, you know, I might say things. I might speak in Spanish a lot, because I do have a lot of friends who primarily speak in Spanish. But that is how like I feel like I do see that of that balance, at least for me, like working out.
Thanks. Cool.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you
How's it
guys
going?
hear me well?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura and Abraham and Amy. I love your questions. And I just wanted to point out that um, she was looking for answers. And I have asked myself that same question, especially because within our community, we have a huge diversity, right? For example, we have first gen that actually their parents were immigrants, but they embrace it, right? And then maybe they speak more Spanglish, or like myself, I was born in Peru when I came to California when I was 50 years old. And I know my accent is stronger, and especially when I'm going to interviews, sometimes I have gotten feedback that, for example, I ramble, right? And I really have asked myself, where is this coming from? And it's really very challenging for us, for example, when we are talking English or in Spanish or Spanglish, because in Spanish, just to say something, you have to say it's longer, right? We use more words, but in English, it's very direct and it's always shorter. So for me, that I work in tech, and I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where it's very techy. And I feel like, how is it that I can embrace my full self at work and not just choosing whether I have to be more authoritarian in an authoritarian sense, or me? So for me, it's being really, really being proud. If I have an accent, being proud of that. And also really, I have done a lot of healing and a lot of, been doing some communication classes, and just how to really embrace both. And now today, I actually feel like I'm more of a global citizen, of a bicultural, bilingual person at work, and I actually that's my superpower. Embracing everything, embracing a little bit of, for example, we are known to be, right, always the happy people, the more warm people, right? So for me, it's really embracing that and not choosing whether one or the other, because in the past I have tried that and it hasn't really worked for me. So I just wanted to say that I really enjoy this topic, especially for perhaps more Latinx that were not born here, but we came at a young age.
No, thanks for sharing. Um, I like that you're embracing it now. I wonder when did you sort of made or have that aha moment of I should just embrace it?
Um, right when after I finished at San Francisco State University, I um, I noticed that I was I was the only Latina in a startup when I started in tech. I was in the customer success area, and I really felt like there were no ERGs, or there were none of that, and I really felt comfortable to talk about a lot of subjects. And then after I left the job, I started another job, and I really struggled to just change jobs and going through interviews. So I asked for support. I started talking with I joined Techqueria, I joined Latinas in Tech. I started talking with other Latinas in tech. We were actually, yeah, I also feel the same. Yeah, we don't know, like same thing that Amy was telling. Yeah, we actually have the same concerns and the same views. And this is a special moment, guys, because Techqueria started a few years ago, but we haven't had this, for example, 10 years ago, right? Like Latinx or recruiting in diversity. I work in recruiting. We haven't had that. So this is our moment. And that's where I'm actually now even more able to just to like speak out. I'm not afraid now to speak out. I think it's because we also have that power because we all now feel more empowered. I feel like, especially in 2020, 2021, and probably starting 2019.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And we had my team, we hired someone who is from Brazil, so he speaks Portuguese, and he has a thick accent. And I remember my manager interviewed him. My manager, he's white. He's like the whitest person I know. He said I remember he told me, he's like, this guy's good, but I think he was just nervous. And what my manager did, which I thought was really awesome, is he found him a Portuguese speaking interviewer to then re-interview him, and then he ended up doing great there. And then it worked out. But I just worry, like, if there wasn't people like that sort of realize, I don't know what. I'm happy to hear what people's thoughts are, but it's like, it would be great, right, if that was just commonplace. And I know it's not, right? I know that sometimes we could get nervous. Like I said, anyone that moves to a new country and takes English as their second language, I don't know how I can't do that. I simply can't. I'm happy that I learned English and Spanish like from day one, because I feel making that jump, and there's just so much more you have to think. And I know there's probably a voice in the back of your head. It's like, oh, I don't even know what's that word. I know it in Spanish, but not in English, but I do hope, right, that it gets easier for people just to put their best foot forward, and as I saw it as an example, like, because my coworker is like one of the best customer engineers I know, and it would have been a shame just because, he got nervous of his accent that he didn't get the job. How do we fix that? That's a whole nother conversation, but at least, I think it's a good example that sort of reminded me from what you said.
Yeah, and having the space just to share this in a safety way is just the starting point. So thank you. Probably there is more people that want to join, but thank you for the time.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Let's see, is there anyone else? Thanks for everyone that's spoken already. It's been fun hearing everyone's.
Yeah, it's been so great, like hearing everybody's perspectives, because it's we had a bit of a brainstorm before this, but like it's just like hearing from everybody it's just so powerful for us to share our stories and our viewpoints on a lot of the experiences that we share, because I don't know about you all, but I don't get a lot of opportunities to really connect with folks like this very often, which it's been great.
Yeah, I think the funny stories that we had like growing up, I think I never thought of them as like useful. It's just this was my childhood, that's it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't until I think I told you this, Laura, that I was speaking to a coworker, and he told me that he never ordered food for his family till he, like, I think it was 20 when he first ordered his first pizza. And then in that moment, I was like 12 ordering pizza for my parents, right? Like, that was just, I hated doing it at the time. I didn't want to talk on the phone, but I remember, now I'm not nervous. When I was 20, I was not nervous ordering Domino's, but he was, right? So I feel there's a lot of little things that we could maybe sucked at the time, right? Like, I also didn't like doing taxes when I was 14. That was not fun, but I do my taxes now, right? I think there's a lot of these cute little stories that hopefully we realize, what, this wasn't that bad, and actually sort of makes it easier for the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow, that's a nice name. Claudette? It's a long name.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, Claudette Cabrera.
Okay.
And of course, kept my Spanish heritage and added Ludwig. So I wanted to elaborate on this because I've, as being a senior leader in another industry, but has had all my schooling and education in technology through that industry, through career experiences, not necessarily through going to school directly for it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously want to be in the technology industry more. Those comes with challenges, but I do want to, it has frustrated me that I hadn't seen the embracing of the diversity of the Latinx community in the tech industry, because the industry that I was in embraced it so many years ago when I was recruited. Their ERG group, and this, I'm dating myself when I say this, but they had an ERG group 20 years ago. That was a Latino ERG group that formed in the 90s. And when I went to get recruited by them, by the company, it was their ERG group that recruited for the talent. And it was it was at a Latin, like a festival like this, we want to say, Techqueria, but it was for MBAs, Hispanic MBAs. And I, now fast forward to today, and it's super critical that the tech industry have these affiliations, ERG groups. But it's interesting, the more I'm discovering that it wasn't there in the beginning. And it disturbs me a lot to know that, because having the background and the history, and I feel like it is time to that, as much of how much the tech industry has opened so many opportunities for so many people, it hasn't opened it really in the way that should be nurturing, and that's the part where, and I'm only reflecting right now, but as part of, trying to speak more about solutions and moving forward, I think it's so important. And I think everyone that spoke today is really, and through the whole summit, has touched on very critical issues. If the industry is going to really embrace diversity and move forward, they have to begin very early in embracing everybody's diversity and authenticity.
And I think listening to others, I think that's what's so cool about this, is you hear, I think someone mentioned, right, you're usually, what is it, the only or the first?
Yeah.
And I feel sometimes when you are, you're like, well, this is what got me into this job, right? But when you're the first, you have to break so many barriers, and to expect everyone else behind you to do the exact same thing, that's a big expectation, right? And I think now, hearing more, I sort of realize, wow, there's a lot more, and I don't think people have ill intent, but I think it's just education, that they don't know how difficult it is. Like a year ago, I didn't know having a thick accent could be an issue when interviewing. I mean, now it makes sense, right? But I didn't live with a thick accent. So, hearing other stories, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know to leverage either a translator or just make it so that it's a fair assessment, right? And hopefully educate others that, hey, this person maybe didn't do poorly. It was more they were sort of set up not in a fair way, right?
Right.
And I think that's what I'm taking away from all these sessions, is that we all have like our own voice, but collectively you sort of see the gaps, because when you are the first one, sadly, you don't see an example like to your left or to your right. You just see what you've done, and maybe others are willing to follow that, but sometimes it's a lot, what someone has done. Like in Laura's case, you're from Uruguay, not Paraguay, but Uruguay, right? Is the expectation for you to go to Chicago and then be able to, enter tech? That's a big jump. I wouldn't do it if I was from Uruguay, because if I get scared of the thought of going and starting everything fresh from another country. Right?
That's
Some
true.
people are bold enough to do that.
I have something to share about, because you guys, I'm tired typing. It's day 3. That's why I'm jumping my introvert is like, no, it's like my introvert versus my carpal tunnel. So it's like, okay, you're coming on
question.
screen. Yeah. So, but there's something very interesting about being the first, and there's other POCs, because people of color are the global majority, thank God, and we're just starting to realize that and operate as that a little bit more. But it's the idea that when you don't have anyone else to model after or to rebel against or to like use as a reference, is very hindering, right? Because even if there would have been, you know, a woman of color that did something like I am doing ahead of me and she would have done it poorly, I would have known what not to do. If she would have done it great, I would have known what to do. If she would have done like halfway the thing, or and even not just like never mind the actual dischargement of someone's role, but just like how do they navigate against stereotypes, right? Because we are portrayed and expected and pigeonholed into being specific people. And when we say something that's assertive, is seen as, you know, aggressive, and you know everybody knows about this thing. But just how a predecessor might navigate those things and what happened to them would have been incredibly useful for, you know, those of us who follow. And as someone that's like, you know, mid-career in a sense, and I lead people and I manage, it's really interesting to for me to question myself when I'm in a position that is like, this is turning toxic. It's a question of like, when do I leave? Because when I leave, who am I leaving behind that doesn't have nothing to model against, right? So it's the same conundrum of like, you know, not as cute as like my introvert versus my carpal tunnel, but it's the idea of like, how much do I endure so that the people that are coming after me have a reference of what to do, what not to do, and, you know, someone else that went before them. So that's a really, really interesting point. I'm so glad that this came up before the end of the conference. I'm gonna jump off. Someone else come and do this thing and talk against their introvert. Thank you.
Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
I think most engineers are introvert. I know for me,
Yeah.
I like shook before, like physically was shaking before doing this. But you know, I think it's important to have these conversations and to sort of, you know, because we could be biased ourselves. I know I am.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot from these simple just 3 days.
I think to that point of, you know, like putting yourself out there, being the first. I think it's sort of like it comes like full circle, but kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of the session. It's just I do like lately, because I've realized that is so important for folks, especially women in tech, to be able to either come to tech or grow in the field. Like I've certainly like become more aware of what I want to give back to the community in coming in these talks, and hopefully by the fact that, you know, we're here and we're having this conversation, this is going to inspire others to the next talk, the next session that comes in, to know that yes, you know, I can talk about my experience. Yes, I can have this discussion, and yeah, maybe I'm a little bit nervous, maybe I'm a bit of an introvert, but like putting yourself out there is not just like helping you grow, but it's also really like paving the way to other folks that feel inspired and are gonna be looking up to you as well. And I think we're unfortunately out of time. Are we?
Oops. Did we? Did we go over?
I think we might have gone over.
Okay.
But
let's see. I guess if there's anyone else, I'm happy to just, you know, share the last 5 minutes. If anyone else wants to jump on, say any last things that maybe you didn't type.
You should be heading over to
the
stage
okay.
one. Okay.
I guess we're getting kicked out. That's fine. Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for jumping on. This was fun. Hopefully more conversations like this happen in the future, and hopefully, you know, actions as well.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here, and to like the Techqueria folks. I think organizing this event is not no small feat. I think, you know, they've been so helpful throughout this conference and the preparation. So thank you to all the organizers, and hope to see you soon.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye.